So I think we're live.
Oh my goodness. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Mandy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Maybe, well, I want to say hello and introduce myself. So I'm Jivana. My pronouns are he and him. And but we're coming live through the Accessible Yoga School, which is where I lead my accessible yoga training. And also, I'm actually going to launch a chair yoga, an introduction to chair yoga course on this platform in the next few months, maybe in June. And I know you're doing some chair yoga. Maybe you could introduce yourself too.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Mandy Lawson, and I'm an accessible yoga ambassador and have done some training with Jivana as well. And I have my own yoga school called Costa Yoga here in Costa Rica. The bugs just decided to get super loud, so hopefully you can hear me still. But yeah, I'm super big into making yoga available to everyone. And I've also recently launched kind of two chair yoga programs. One that is more a practice-based one for people who want to practice chair yoga, learn more about it, and then have some practices. And then one that's more of a certification, a teacher training for teachers as well on my platform in Costa Yoga.
Wow. And do you do that in person down there?
I'm not currently doing it in person. I'm just after COVID starting to get back into in-person training. So I do a 200 and a 300 hour training here live this year. I hope to do the chair yoga live soon, but I don't have dates at the moment.
Wow. Yeah. I don't hear bugs, but I hear birds, I think. Is that birds?
Mostly birds. There was just like a cicada that got real loud.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's amazing. How is it down there with COVID? I mean, how have things been?
Things actually, so on the 13th of this month, they just released all restrictions. So some places are still requiring masks or just like their personal decision to do that, which is great, but you have the freedom kind of now to do whatever works. And coming into the country, I also have a retreat center here called Kabuya Lodge. And so like tourism is big on our minds as well. And things have been picking up actually. I was just looking at the numbers and we are about 3/4 of the way back to pre-COVID numbers for tourism. And that's going to be helped now. You don't need a test to come into the country and things have opened up. So it's definitely gotten a lot easier to get here.
Yeah, and I would think the whole economy there would be really impacted by a lack of tourism. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a tough while. And so it's been really nice to see just the difference of a few dollars for a lot of families is huge. So it's been really good to see kind of an uptick in tourism and people being able to live well. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about chair yoga then. So what is it that draws you to it? Like, what do you really like about teaching or practicing chair yoga?
Well, yeah, I super love both. And I think like the first thing that drew me to kind of taking yoga to a more sort of accessible space was Instagram and looking at the hashtag of yoga for beginners and being like, what? Like that isn't, no, this is not yoga for beginners. And so that inspired me to create a program called From the Ground Up, which was just like starting from like, this is how you sit down and like this, all of these things. And so it kind of grew from that space of wanting to like actually make yoga be available for everyone and for all those people who were intimidated to go to a studio, starting there and then not even being able to go to a studio. It's like, how can we take these wonderful practices and make them more available to people? And doing yoga in a chair is helpful for so many people with so many different challenges that they might experience. And so I found that that's just such a great way to bring this practice to people who might not otherwise know they can be able to do and all of those things. So
I just wrote a blog that came out today about it, and I was focusing on the question of tradition versus innovation in asana. I think one of the issues I hear about from yoga teachers mostly and some practitioners is that if you adapt too much, then you lose something. You're losing some kind of, not only the tradition, but there's some essential asana-ness that is gone if you make a practice different, whether it's in a chair or even on the mat, I guess. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I was curious, what do you think about that?
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that was a real struggle. I think like for me growing as a yoga teacher and this imposter syndrome thing coming in and being like, but if I think that we could do it like this and this would benefit this person, like, first of all, who am I within the tradition of yoga to be able to do that? Can I? And then like through all the learning I've done and practicing and seeing the benefits that people have received through these little tweaks, being like, yes, I can, because for me, I feel like yoga, yes, it is like a tradition that is to be honored, but at the same time, it's a practice for each and every one of us. And if we can't access it on an individual level, then we're being exclusive, and that's just like not what yoga is.
Right.
And so I really feel so strongly that like, and I had someone message me today saying like, I don't feel comfortable instructing my students that have a certain issue, like to bring their arms overhead. And I was like, have them look up a little bit. What if we do a mini spinal extension? That can be, your arms up. It doesn't have to be. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I what you just said is kind of what the heart of that blog is that I shared, and that it's not in opposition to the tradition of yoga. It's actually in alignment with the tradition of yoga, because if you really look at yoga philosophy and teachings beyond like recent history of yoga, but really going back to the sources that we're still using, which is the sutras and the Gita, we're looking at yoga as a spiritual practice, which is really about seeing spirit in each person and really giving each of us an opportunity to find a personalized practice that helps us connect with ourselves. And it seems to me that by definition, then we would have this kind of personalized individual approach to yoga. And part of that is adapting it, right, to all bodies. And I think so much of yoga these days is influenced by ableism and the way that kind of the Western idea of like a healthy body or a perfect body, as if that's the goal, when really it's not. I mean, the goal of yoga is a spiritual connection, and that means it's okay to get older and get sick and then eventually die. Like that's part of our life process. That's normal. Like you can't avoid that. Like yoga is not going to make you live forever. It might
unfortunately not. I mean, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but no, it's not. Yeah.
So it just feels like, I think people get attached to a certain way, like, oh, this is how this pose is supposed to be.
Yes.
And it's hard to get our minds around like, okay, wait, if I can't create that shape in my body, then what am I actually doing? And I think it really forces us to reflect on what is the deeper practice, even in asana. I don't mean in yoga. I don't mean yoga more broadly, but just like even in asana, there's something else that's going on, right? Beyond creating shapes.
Absolutely. And I love that, because I really, oh man, there's so many things I want to say, but absolutely. Like, and I think if we're thinking about the Gita and we're thinking about the sutras and like, first of all, how small of a piece of those asana is, first of all. So, but then again, if we take it down to specifically asana to kind of just keep it there a little bit, it forces us to really go beyond that. And as a teacher, I love to have that opportunity to share that with each individual person and bring that out. Like, I find it hard to articulate, but just like this like sense of connectedness that we get when we give back, like through karma yoga or just this like what it is that we're seeking, the state of yoga through an asana practice, when we can kind of get over ourselves and like, can I create this shape? And sure, it's fun to challenge yourself and try to do something. There's something to be gained for that, but the acceptance that we can gain when we really like settle into what it is that we are able to do and accept that and just be there, that is the yoga. And when that clicks for someone, man, that is just so amazing.
Right. So that's really looking at what is the purpose of asana.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the purpose really about, well, first of all, is the purpose about creating something, some shape? Is that the goal? Is the goal actually to make your body do something? Or is actually the purpose of the practice is to have a deeper experience, like you just said, like to really be present or to be more conscious of your inner experience or what your mind's doing. Like, I think that these subtle things are actually really more important in yoga. This is what yoga is for. It's not like And I think part of it for me is just like getting older, and just knowing in myself, like my practice doesn't look the same as it did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, of course not.
And that's okay. Like, and actually I think it can be deeper and more advanced, even if it doesn't look physically more advanced.
Absolutely.
Because there's something else going on. Like asana is not about achieving physical perfection. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when I started thinking about teaching like advanced yoga, like doing a 300-hour training, and people ask me the question like, oh, so does that mean like this one you're finally going to teach us headstands and handstands? I'm like, nope, I'm never going to teach you a headstand or a handstand. Don't even ask me. Like, it's not happening. But we are going to go deeper because we're going to experience the postures from the place of our breath, or from the place of all of these other things that we can use to explore that depth. And yeah.
Exactly. Like, what is advanced? What does advanced mean in yoga?
Not a headstand, not for me. Yeah.
Either. No, I used to do it, but I hurt myself. It was just damaging my neck, and I think I was doing it incorrectly. But even then, it's just part of its age. Like I don't feel like I know that's not what yoga is simply about. It's not overcoming the body. And I think it's interesting because there is a tradition in yoga that's very much about that, about using physical practices to kind of get beyond the body altogether, like holding your arm up in the air for years at a time, or never lying down. Like ascetic, there's the ascetic side.
Right.
That I feel like sometimes we mix that in with asana a little bit, and it's confusing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've gone to those places too, especially when I think about people who have like body image issues or these kinds of things. And I always just bring it back to balance. Like yoga is the middle road. So if we're doing this and we are like torturing ourselves in a lot of ways, like what are we really gaining from that? Like, are we going to win a prize? And I think if you read some of the yoga philosophy stories, it's, you might interpret it that way, but when you really see, it's like the acceptance is, and like the being where you are, the presence is what wins you, in the end. But yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, and like I said, to begin with, it's like, if yoga is really this deeper connection or a spiritual practice, how can it not be for everyone? Like it's just illogical. Like if it's about spirit, and that's something we all share. And so if you can't find a practice that all bodies can participate in, then I don't feel like you're teaching yoga. Like it doesn't feel like it's yoga to me if it's exclusive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think exclusivity is like the opposite of yoga, that connection. Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I don't even know how many times I've said, like, if you can breathe, you can practice yoga. And just finding that place and of presence, and regardless if you're in a bed and unable to get out of it, you can practice yoga. And really passionate about sharing that with people, because man, there's been so many people who have emailed me, be like, I want to do this, or I want to come to a retreat, like, can I though, because I'm this age or whatever. I'm like, what are you talking about? Get your butt down here. Like, we're doing it. Of course you can do it.
Even if you can't breathe, like I had a student who has ALS, and I taught them recently, and they were on a ventilator. And so the ventilator was controlling their breath. And it was a really interesting experience, because I almost always go to the breath when I'm teaching, it's just it's what we do.
Yeah.
And with him, it was like, I was really having to explore how to not do that. Like, how could you actually go even a little more subtle? And that's the other thing I just want to say about teaching chair yoga or accessible yoga for me, is that oftentimes people think we have to we're simplifying, or we're like making it less than. But actually, what I find is that we're actually going deeper and going more subtle. And oftentimes the way to adapt practice, in my experience, is you go to the more subtle layer. So like the kosha model, like if you're working with the body, the breath, the mind, is like, if you can't work with if you're struggling with the body, you can work with the breath. If you're not working with the breath, you can work with the mind, but it's more challenging. It's more subtle. So that's
amazing.
Yeah. What?
I love that you said that. Now I'm going to change that. Absolutely. So
it's okay.
Well, no, I mean, I can still say, if you can breathe, you can do yoga. And even if you can't breathe, you can still do yoga.
Yeah.
like they add on to it. That's amazing. And I 100% agree. It becomes all the more challenging because like, you're not just going to get on there and, do some sun salutations and call it a day. Now we really have to go deeper. What a gift, really. I mean, it's so
Right.
cool.
And I often find that my students who do have disabilities or physical challenges force me to go deeper. Like there's an extra level of awareness or sensitivity that I gain from working with them, and through, in a way, it's like limitation sparks creativity and allows for like a deeper experience. And so that's what I find with chair yoga or bed yoga, all that is just actually a lot more creativity, a lot more spaciousness actually for me, because I think I can let go of some of those external things more, some of that, the competition and the sense of, am I doing this right? Does it look right? And I think for students as well, it's like, there's a certain freedom in change, you know.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important thing that you touched on too, is like, even for those of us who are really focused on teaching yoga in this way, I mean, the external world still exists. So we still see the social media, all of these things. So we're still being bombarded with this, right? So it's a constant check-in for me too, of like, what am I really doing here? And that's part of my practice is that. And so, yeah, having these opportunities to learn from our students are just it's just so amazing to learn and deepen our teaching. Yeah.
It is amazing. And I feel like it, like, to me, it really opens up, I don't know, like the fullness of the practice, because like I said, you go more subtle, I think. And so you have to really look at, well, you can try working with the breath, you can try working with the mind, you can try using sound, whether it's mantra or singing or whatever. It's like you can go to these different places. You can work with relaxation and meditation and go into those places that, I think a lot of people end up just on that surface physical layer, working so much with the body and getting caught up in it.
Yeah.
And asana is fun and everything, but I feel like there's just so much more to these practices.
Yeah. Even if you were looking at it strictly like with the time model, if you have an hour, half an hour to do a practice, like take away the physical stuff, and what else can we do here? Get an opportunity to dive into some of the stuff we might not get a chance to do in other classes as much.
So what do you do in your chair yoga classes? Like what kind of things?
I like to start with, I mean, I always think about the 8 limbs and make sure that I'm including everything in some kind of way. And so starting off with, a lot of like thinking about the yamas and the niyamas, a lot of this just comes through in our language and the way that we treat people and, all of that stuff. But making sure to include some sort of breath work. So something simple, usually just like a breath awareness. And I like the work of Jessica Char and thinking about like pranayama. I once had a student I was teaching at a retreat, and she's just complaining. She's like, we haven't even done alternate nostril breathing yet. And I was like, you pay attention to the fact that you're breathing first. Like, let's start somewhere else. And so like really just like finding some breath awareness, like realizing that we can control our breath. Where can we experience the spaciousness of breath in our body? Like, can we bring awareness? So definitely some breath awareness, some type of mindfulness meditation. So always including that. I like to do a little bit of self massage, and sometimes some eye yoga, which I picked up from you in your training, actually. I really love that. And some face yoga. So incorporating all of these little details, which I seem to remember more in chair yoga, because I'm like, what else can we do here? If we're limited in some places, how can we include a little bit more of the body and the mind and the breath? And yeah, and then working into a nice warm up and going through and working through. And usually I'll have a focus of building strength, building flexibility, mobility, balance, whatever it might be, and kind of have like a focal point to just not make it be so like wild. But yeah, that's
awesome. Yeah, I do the same. I mean, I really try to think about a larger benefit or something that we could focus on. I think it gives meaning, it gives meaning to the work you're doing. It's like, yeah, focusing on strengthening or balance, whatever. Even in the chair, like people don't realize you can still work on all those things in the chair. And again, like you said, the limiting of the movement actually allows things to expand in a way. It's hard to describe, but I think it's exciting. So I would just say for people who haven't done chair yoga, and even bed yoga, like I love bed yoga too. Like I feel like if you when you create some kind of like structure or like discipline around what you're doing, it allows for creativity and expansion to happen. And I find that in these practices. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I talk about like in like mat classes and stuff like that, choosing a theme kind of to like give you a focal point to like grow from. And I find that to be similar as well. And as a teacher, it can be challenging to like put together a class and get up and like find what am I going to do and say. And I think like a good tip for people who want to teach that, it is doing something like that, because then, like you said, you can be more creative and it gives you a place to work from. And I think it's great for the students too, because oftentimes I think people coming to yoga in a chair, maybe it's their first time practicing, or maybe it's been a while, or, you know, lots of different things, but having like something to focus on as a goal can be super helpful for keeping them focused as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you could add the links to your programs from this video.
I think so. Maybe like go in after we're done on
Yeah.
Facebook and do it underneath. Yeah. Okay. I'll do
That's
that.
what I'm saying. I'll put links in there for mine too. And so people can find out more about our work that way, I guess. That would be good.
Absolutely. And then like, or maybe can we put them in the description, because then when I share, then I can, and you can put your book links in there too. I'd love you to put your books for your links for your books, as I share those in my trainings too, because they're just wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, why don't you, if you send them to me, we can add the links so people will have them on the video.
Amazing.
So
Okay.
thanks, Mandy. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you for talking to me. It's been such a pleasure, and you've been such a source of inspiration for me, Jivana, and so many people around the world. So I really appreciate you and Accessible Yoga. For real. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Let's see.